Okay, guys, welcome. So today we're going to be talking about our learning environment and situational factors to consider. At this time, we have four different people from four different districts in four different parts of Texas, and we're going to let each one of us to introduce ourselves. My name is Pedro Beltran. I am the Director of Data and Technology at Central Middle School in Galveston Independent School District.
And
Okay.
I am Colby Clifford. I am a fifth and sixth grade language arts teacher at Mitchell Intermediate and Conroe ISD.
Hey, I'm Allison. I'm a sixth grade math teacher at A Plus Charter Schools in Dallas, Texas.
And I am Brianna Rodriguez. I am a kindergarten teacher in Goliad, Texas.
Welcome, guys. Today we're going to be talking about a few questions that we have to discuss about our environment and our situational factors, which are a little bit different for each one of us. But we're going to start with our first guiding question, which is talking about a specific context of the teaching and learning situation. This starts as, how many students are in your class? Is this a course a primary, secondary, undergraduate, graduate level? And how long and frequent are the class meetings? Let's dig about more in this question with Brianna.
Sure. I roughly have 20 students, give or take, and I'm primary, of course, since it's kindergarten. My lesson is going to be math. So it's math units. We meet every day, of course. We have a math block, 120 minutes every day. And I will be doing a blended learning classroom. So my three groups are going to be a technology center, the teacher small group, and then my other hands-on learning station will be changed out. I haven't really decided yet, probably daily, between STEM, play-based, dramatic play, and stuff like that.
Okay. I will go next. I'm not really in the classroom. I actually are managing a program, which is an after-school program for engineering. We have three different teachers. They do robotics, coding, and drones. So what we're going to be doing is I'm gonna emphasize the fact that we are gonna bring blended learning into this model, and we're gonna use it as a pilot. And this pilot will become a guiding question. Oh, I'm sorry, the guiding structure for embed a class for next year on one of our electives. At this time, we're still looking into the situation, but I think that we're definitely gonna go with the rotation model and PBL project.
Awesome. I feel like I have a ton of kids in my class. I have usually about 25, and our lessons for math, we have about an hour and a half, which is quite a bit of time to spend on math. So with the e-portfolios, I'm hoping I can use a blended learning model and have my students do whole group instruction and then break them apart and differentiate it a little bit better and put them in smaller groups because I have the time to work with them. And hopefully that will make things better.
So I am at a middle school like Allison, and we teach the same age pretty much. The unique thing about my school is that we loop. So we're a fifth and sixth grade campus. But the students that I will have this year in sixth grade, I had last year in fifth grade. So that's going to make taking off this year with the e-portfolio even better, because we organized a lot of things last year to be ready to implement it this year. But I have four classes and they're each about 25 students. So I have 100 students total, which does make it challenging keeping on top of assessments. Maybe the EP will help with that as well. And so I see each one of those 100 students for about an hour a day. And I'm thinking that my instruction this year will be hybrid in that it will have some online components and some flipped components, but there will still be some face-to-face instruction. Oh, it also asked about our classroom environment. So I bought a sofa. So I'm going to change up the actual seating situation in my classroom. I don't know if you guys are into flexible seating or if you're already like ahead of me, like I feel like a lot of people are, but I'm gonna go for it this year with flexible seating.
Definitely something that, yeah, I mean, in my case, I'm able to make those decisions, and I know it will not be a problem. I'm not sure about how about you, Alison? Can you make those arrangements and make those modifications?
Yeah, I have science tables in my math classroom instead of like just separate desks. So that makes some things a little bit more complicated, but a futon or couch is on my to buy list this summer. And I already have about 4 different like types of chairs. I think I have 2 like butterfly wingback chairs and 2 plastic like lawn chairs. And it's been interesting, especially last year with just those 4 things, to see how the kids treat them and how excited they get when they get to like go sit in it during class. So I'm thinking a couch is going to make that even better because I'm just adding another incentive for them, because they just feel special when they get to learn there. And if they're a little bit more comfortable, they're a little more open.
Gotcha. We can see how, each one of our environments are totally different. So we're gonna dig a little bit more into the context, the general context of the learning situation. And the question is, what learning expectations are placed on the course or curriculum by the school, district, university, college, or department, profession, or society? In my case, this is gonna be done through our school, because this is a program that belongs only to our school. So we have fully autonomy on what we want to do with it. A few things that we have in place and we want to actually set as expectations is that our teachers will create a rubric, and everything will be based on projects. So there's not actually a grade. It is actually the expectation that students will learn, will create, will discover, and will explore. And we're not, making a link at all with a grade. The other part that we're doing is we're making sure that students are collaborating and using their and applying their knowledge to make sure that they are implementing this in the blended learning environment, and that we will be using the technology provided by the school district uh, remotely and at school. So far, those are the basic expectations that we have. Our school, hopefully, that we can replicate that with other schools in the district.
Awesome. I think how I feel about the learning situation with math, at least in my district, and I'm sure Colby understands this because she teaches a tested subject too, but with the STAR test always looming kind of over your head, especially in Texas. I know other states have other tests, but it's like there's always this pressure from every level, from the district, from administration, from other teachers, from parents, that their kids are ready to pass this test. Not so much that they learn and they're becoming, capable young adults, but that they can pass a test. So teaching math, most people think like 2 + 2 is 4, it's just very easy. It's like a linear thing. You have to know basic addition before you can move on to like multiplication. But math is kind of the basis of all other subjects. I mean, not ELAR so much, but sciences, engineering, technology, all of those things have something to do with math. So I feel like there's all this pressure on the test. So it's kind of hard to move away from that. But I'm hoping that with the e-portfolio and using blended learning, we can put more focus on the actual learning rather than preparing for a test. And then they'll just be ready for the test because they know the information better. They have a better understanding of all of it. Colby, do you feel the same way about testing with ELAR?
Yes, and I would even say that I mean, like, nothing against math, but there is the reading comprehension element that that the kids have to know how to think about what they're reading in math and
Oh,
science.
I would 100% agree with that.
So Yes, I do. But I really firmly believe that the less we stress out about the test, the better the kids are going to do. Like, we talk about not stressing out about the test, and I try really hard not to even use that vocabulary. So I'm going to just keep going. Our next question is for us to consider the nature of the subject. And the question for number 3, if y'all are okay, if I keep going, is the nature of the subject, which is kind of what we're talking about already. Is your subject primarily theoretical, practical, or a combination? And is the subject primarily convergent or divergent? And are there important changes or controversies occurring within this field? So, like everything in education, teaching language arts, there's a pendulum swing with focusing on grammar and spelling, dropping handwriting, picking handwriting back up. There's just a lot that language arts teachers assess because we're responsible for reading, writing, grammar, handwriting now. It's just a lot. And if you look at the TEKs seem kind of abstract. So the TEK that I decided to focus on for my understanding by design template was 6-6. And let me just read you the STEM. Response skills, it's reading response is what I'm focusing on. Listening, speaking, reading, writing, and thinking using multiple text. The student responds to an increasingly challenging variety of sources that are read, heard, and viewed. The student is expected to, and then there's A through I of specific expectations for that TEK. So the reason I brought this up is because language arts is completely divergent. Like, everything that we are expecting the kids to be able to do when they enter junior high it's interwoven into everything else. So our standards are so broad in language arts that I try not to even focus on one specific element. Like in math, your TEKs are very specific and they build on each other. But in language arts, they all are braided together. You're doing all of them at the same time, which is exciting to me when I think about how e-portfolios can help form a picture. Like, it can help when you work in an e-portfolio, it becomes your artifact of each one of those things. So it's not so abstract what the kids are learning. And I think the e-portfolio can help them think about their thinking in a more clear way because it breaks down that abstraction.
I would argue that math, it does build on top of each other. And that's where I've kind of run into a problem with talking about e-portfolios with other teachers, because they think that it can only work if something is specific and it builds on top of each other. But I think math, part of the problem we're having, like I think in every school with math, is people are putting the focus on the standards, like on the very specific, you need to know how to add, you need to know how to multiply, you need to be able to find the area and volume of polygons and prisms and all these things, when our focus should be on the process standards. So talking about how can I look at a problem and figure out what that problem is asking me to do and what information is important for me to solve it. And a teammate of mine, that's what he did this year. That's what he focused on, was the process standards, which are formatted more like what you were just talking about. They're very broad, very vague. And when he did that, he found that the kids had a better understanding of math because the arithmetic they can do, it's easy. It's the language part and the understanding what it's asking you for, which is what you were just talking about, that's tripping them up. So I agree. I think e-portfolios are a great way that we can kind of pull that in so they have better, I'm not sure how you would say it, like, I don't want to say cognitive functioning.
No, I know exactly what you're talking about. I just was reading a book that Pepper wrote, and he was saying that maybe kids that have strengths in language arts are weak in math because they don't understand the vocabulary of math. So they might have an informal understanding of a mathematical concept, but when you start using math vocabulary words that they are not making that informal and formal connection, they think they can't do math, but it's just that they're stronger in language arts or vocabulary and not numbers. But if we can bridge those two together, which I think is what you're saying,
Yes.
it might help that kid.
That's why I'm hoping with ePortfolios this year, I can start teaching math as a language, because math is a
Love
language.
that. Yes.
So,
And writing about math.
yes, writing about math, using the vocabulary and connecting that with the numbers, making them go together and make sense, I think will not only just help them learn it better and understand it, but really be able to use it in like real world situations.
But what do you do for the kid that's more of a numeracy person and less a literacy person? How can you bridge that? We'll table that and come back.
I'm working on that part.
Sure. I mean, I hear you guys, and I know how your situations are so different than mine, just because I don't have to be thinking about the test. For us, it's a more discovery. Let's go and see what we can do. And so we don't have the pressure of the standards. We don't even have standards that go along with it. It's going to be a matter of finding our teachers and making sure that there's some takeaways that we're going to be looking for standards because we need to align it to something. But at the same time, we're trying to discover this process. So I know how you guys are discovering, but at the same time, you're kind of restricted just because there's some things you have to do for testing, which is not actually my case, because this is a pilot program and it's just only about engineering, which it has 100% reading and math, but we had to use a different approach. And I know that somebody who has a totally different approach for all of this is our next person, is Brianna. She can talk to us a little bit about what she does.
Well, I missed a little bit of it. It's pouring down here, so my internet is not friendly with that.
You could start us off on number 4.
Perfect. So for my learners, a majority of them are classified as low socioeconomic. We are Title I school. So family involvement is probably usually minimal, and there's usually no reinforcement of the material we teach at school. There's no reinforcement at home. That's usually the situation with most of the kids. So prior knowledge for this project, which is I am asking them to build or design a costume of any age. That way they can have a concept of, is this number big or small? And then the research behind that. So what does that person at that age look like? Because of that, they don't really have any exposure as to, is this number big or small? Most of them have come from a Head Start program where they focus on social and emotional aspects, which is great for the human caring side of this 3 table. But sometimes the actual material is not there. But then I also have few that come in that can tell me, numbers 0 to 100 and represent it and write it. So it's usually a huge range, and I have to figure out how to differentiate all of that. And I think blended learning is going to give me the opportunity to do that. And each one of the kids will be able to show that, so what if they pick 5 because that's the biggest number that they know, but they're going to know it and they're going to master it. And the same thing for another child who might know something bigger and want the challenge for themselves.
I think that's awesome. I definitely see where you're coming from, because before I taught 6th grade, I was doing preschool. So like 3 and 4-year-olds. And my niece, she just turned 5. And when I say she's far ahead of other kids I know her age, she's way beyond.
Look at her aunt. Of course she is.
Only imagine having to try to differentiate for all the different kids, because you don't want to leave anybody behind. So,
and then
kudos to you.
A little piggyback off of what y'all are talking about, the teaks to some extent is like, well, the teaks say they only need to walk out of here knowing 0 through 20. But again, what if I have your niece in my class? That is not fair to her. Why am I holding her back? Yes, she, knows this teak, but that doesn't mean I stop. That doesn't mean she doesn't deserve, the challenge in her own aspect.
Absolutely. I think my kids come from a pretty similar background to yours. We're classified as low socioeconomic, a Title I school. And some of these kids, like their focus is purely on school. Like they come from a good home, their parents, they help them with their homework, they care about them, they come to school ready to learn. But I have other students who come to school hungry. Like, how can you focus on math or ELA or history if you're hungry? So it's been a journey trying to navigate differentiating for all these different kids at all these different levels, when some of them, like, they're not even there, their mind is not at school. And especially because I did not grow up that way, it's been difficult. But I feel like now, especially after everything that's happened this past year with COVID and having to do online blended learning, that I have a better understanding of where they're coming from. So I kind of know that we need to start at a different place than where I think we do, and build up to these bigger ideas and concepts. Like, they need to have those little wins before we can get to the hard stuff. Because if otherwise, they're not going to care, because they're going to fail the first time and they're not going to want to try again.
Definitely hear you. And my case is really similar to both of you. We have students that I will say that 60% of my students are coming hungry to school, and just making sure that they can get some breakfast because they don't get that attention. And it goes along with that. We have some of the students that are perhaps not in the best situations, but at the end, if we spend some time with them, they will surprise you. Like you said, we had to find students where they at and then build them up. And that's one of the things that we want to do with this engineering program, because we don't actually have requirements for it. Uh, Anybody who wants to participate can participate, and we trying to scout and look for candidates that perhaps even with disciplinary issues they can actually improve not just their behavior but the knowledge. So it's kind of like also a turnaround program that can actually get the best out of you. So this is pretty much what we stand.
So my school and the situation of my learners is that there are challenges that sound different than your challenges. I have quite a lot of pressure from parents that we always offer the best, and that my assessment decisions are questioned quite frequently, because almost all of the parents expect their children to be earning A's all the time. And they have extremely high expectations for their children's futures. A lot of my parents are, they have high expectations for themselves. So it's tough in that knowing that I'm always being looked at and I'm always going to be questioned. So I have to be really careful about that. And our school as a whole prides itself on being able to say that we are innovative and we're always kind of pushing boundaries. So there are good sides to that. I was able to receive permission to do a lot of the things that I envision. And my kids do come with quite a bit of background knowledge and schema. They are well read and they're very cultured and they are well traveled. And so that makes for some pretty exciting classroom discussions for sixth graders. So I think no matter what school or campus you're on, there's pros and cons and things that you are stressed out about and things that kind of help you move your ideas along. Mine sound like they might be a little bit different than yours, but they're definitely still there.
How interesting that you said that although each one of us have a mix or something totally different as students, we are kind of embedded in the same system. And we can see that that will grow students, whether they're in, in a different socioeconomical status or different area of Texas. It looks like, that kind of shows you how much this ideas can work.
Yeah. Ages, subject areas, socioeconomic backgrounds, they all need it.
Absolutely. And it's important to remember, and I think all of us already know this, but that even though some kids may come to school hungry and they, seem really behind or they have really bad behavior problems, that they still have the same potential as somebody at Colby School who maybe comes from a really,
Well,
you know,
plus there's a very real aspect to where I live, in that some people, some of my kids are hungry and they have to hide it, or some of my kids can't go on vacation, so they come to school and everybody's talking about Cabo and they didn't go anywhere, and they come to school, like there's one or two that, you never know what's going on in families. And for my kids, the ones that have a hard home life, I wonder if it's even harder for them because they can't talk about it.
Because it's not the norm. It's
No.
not the norm here. And I feel like some of the teachers at my school, of course, we all want to do right by the kids, but I think that they forget that sometimes, that even though these kids struggle, they have that same potential. And if we hold them accountable to achieve excellence, they will surpass us.
Yeah.
Like they will blow our expectations out of the water if that's what you tell them they're capable of.
And I think that this leads to our final part, right? When we're talking about the characteristics of the teacher.
Yes. So the characteristics of the teacher, so the beliefs and values that the teacher holds about teaching and learning. And I think this really ties into what we've been talking about with our teaching and learning philosophies, that the way that we learn influences how we teach as teachers. So for me, I feel like I love math. I've always loved math. So with my kids, teaching them math is like the most exciting thing, especially when they get it. When they get it and they start taking it somewhere else, or they show me a new way to solve a problem, it just like makes my whole day, because that's what I did and I love doing it. So I feel like when I go to my classroom, I approach it in that every student's able to succeed and do math. Everybody can do math. It just may take you a different approach, or it may take you longer to understand, because maybe you think more like Colby and you are more wordy than numbers, or maybe you're more focused on numbers and then you're going to struggle in Colby's class. It's all different student strengths, but they all have the capability to do it. And I feel like this subject, because I've loved it, I'm pretty good at math. So I don't struggle too much, but I definitely make mistakes. And the kids, it's funny because they'll call me out on it. And then I'll be like, okay, you come show me how to do it then if I did it wrong. And then they're teaching each other. So it's kind of fun to see it happen in action. But I feel like the biggest strength I have, especially in teaching math, is that the kids, I don't want them to look at me and think I know it all, because math is always expanding. There's new things in math every year and new methods. Like now kids go home and they're like, Mom, help me with my homework. And their mom's like, I don't know what you're doing. That is not multiplication. I don't know what that is. But it's fun. And the more methods that come out and the more it changes, the more students are able to learn it, because you can show them 10 different ways to solve a problem. One of them's going to stick. So I think that really what it comes down to is just that, the way that you were taught influences the way you teach, but also the way that you see your students is what's going to make all the difference.
I can definitely agree with you. Me as a teacher, or in me as an administrator now, I have that started with having you just have to get it done, and the sit and get, and we transmit what we have received. So this journey has improved me into looking at trying to see where the students at, bring it up, and not make assumptions of what they can do, and just thinking about that they're not there yet.
Right. Well, and I've learned in the past 2 years, because I'm a newer teacher, that sometimes you just got to shut the door and do what you got to do to help them, whether that's what is expected or what's right, quotes, what's right.
Close your
Or
ears.
people might think it's bad, but it's, if it's going to help them, if you believe that it will help them, how can that be wrong? And if what you're doing is not working, why would you keep doing it?
Yeah. And I think sometimes that it's great that you already are realizing that. But what you get better at doing is closing the door, doing what works, and then just rearranging your vocabulary so that you can change what you know works to sort of match up with the expectation. Because I
Right.
really do think that people at the TEA and the people that write the standards, they do have the best interests of the kids at heart. They want our kids to succeed. So they are writing these standards, maybe not having been in the classroom for a while, but if that's our job to make the standards work. And to answer our last question, I love that there's people like Allison that are across the hall that are really good at math and that love math and love numbers. And I love reading and writing. And I am just so thankful that I get paid to read, and I get paid to write, and I get paid to share that with kids, with like 5th and 6th graders, the perfect age when they're discovering what they have in books and what writing can do for them and how they're so interconnected. And I try to keep that always at the forefront. I always want my classroom to be like a book club, because what do you do at book club? You talk about what you're reading, and you notice what you're reading, and you write down what you notice. And I should have a t-shirt made. My kids say it all the time. You have to read with a pencil. So that's what my kids in my classroom do. And if we're doing that with integrity, it really does line up with these TEKs. We are describing personal connections with our books. We are writing responses that demonstrate our understanding. We are interacting with our sources in meaningful ways, because that's what real readers do. So I think that every teacher, every good teacher, the characteristics of that teacher will just spill out into the class. And hopefully we're in the right classroom. Like, I wouldn't want to be hired to teach math, but hopefully that, and then our knowledge of the subject and our familiarity of the subject is something that will just grow as we continue to learn, because we're learners.
I thought it was interesting, Allison, that you said you almost unintentionally make mistakes, but for mine, since they're so little, I mean, it's kind of hard for me to mess up in 0 to 20, but for them, that's a big deal. So I will do it intentionally, and whatever the case may be, write the number wrong or do something wrong, but I just go about my day. And eventually it might take a while, but somebody will see that mistake and they will call me. And like you said, they're so mean, but I love it, because they were like, Miss R, you did that wrong. And the enthusiasm that they have in realizing, like, oh my gosh, she's the teacher, but she messed up. Like, what? And then they suddenly want to always find my mistakes. Then we're moving on, and oh, you messed up there, even though I didn't. But that I know that they're looking for it. I know that they are actually looking for the work at the work and processing it and realizing whether it was right or wrong, but it's going in. And then I'll hear them talk about it, at lunch, like, Miss R, like, she don't even know what she's doing, but it's fine. But because they're still talking about it, and they're still, realizing that I'm learning too, regardless of whether I know it or not, that I want them to see that I make mistakes and it's okay. And you corrected me, and thank you for that. And let's keep going.
I'm so glad you brought that up, Brianna, because I want to I want to really think about how I frame mistakes this year. Like, how much that we've learned about the growth mindset and how much we learn from mistakes and weakness. It's like priceless.
Well, what was the quote? I think it was from, oh, I can't remember, but he was talking about that we have to be like Michelangelo with the kids. We need to be doing it together, carving it together on their level, not just instructing them from behind.
Yes.
We need to be learning together. And I think that's why I'm making mistakes, because sometimes I do it intentionally, every once in a while. Most of the time is unintentional, especially the spelling mistakes. And those are their favorite to call me out on. And I'm like, this is why I don't teach English. Okay. I'm a math.
He spells things wrong. That's like 20th century. It's fine.
Right. And so, but it's so fun to see them find the mistakes because you know they're paying attention, because once you do it one time, they're going to look for them, and they love to call you out, especially sixth graders. They like to roast you in front of all their friends and all the other teachers.
As we build our e-portfolios and do things more digitally, our sixth graders, they actually do know more than me in many cases. So they can tell me, I know, like by a certain point in the year, you know which 4 or 5 kids you can call on. So I intentionally say, hey, Allison, can you show me how to do this? Because I already know you know. So the more we go in that direction, don't you think our middle schoolers are going to be able to help us?
Absolutely. And I started this last year and I'm excited to keep doing it, but I have lanyards that have, it says like team leader on them. And so the kids that I notice that they get it, they're doing it, they're speeding through it, you know, they're really fast. I just walk over to them, you know, real chill, and I give them a lanyard and I say, okay, somebody's going to come ask you questions if they need help. Like, just so you know, you need to wear this lanyard and you're going to help them. And then it gives me a chance, because after I pass out 3 or 4 of them, I can really focus on the kids who really need the extra attention. Like they need the support. And then those 4 kids who I know they get it can help their friends and explain it to them, maybe in a way that makes more sense than the way I would explain it. So I'm excited to keep doing that. And I am curious to see how it will work with e-portfolios, if maybe I can put it more into like a digital format where they like host like their own little kind of Zoom meeting like this, and they can talk about problems and work through them together. And then that person is the leader. Like they're the ones that are going to check the work and make sure they're on the right track.
Love it.
And this is what, we're learning from our environments and our situations. They're definitely different for each one of us. I'm really happy for everybody was able to join this meeting and to discuss these 5 points. I know that I have, and I am learning every day more and more from each one of you. So I appreciate you guys. And is there anybody else want to say anything to closure?
No, thank you guys.
Yeah, thanks guys.
Go team Harapnik Quartet.
There you go.
Again.
And guys, thank you for listening.